We now begin our first panel, Digital Democracy in the Age of AI, Exploring Elections, Civic Tech, and Digital Participation. This session will be moderated by Kuan-Wei Chen, Assistant Professor from Kyoto University. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, Professor Nathaniel Persily from Stanford University, Ms. Isabel Ho, General Secretary from Taiwan AI Academy, and Professor Satoshi Yamada from Kyoto University. Professor Chen, the floor is yours.
So thank you for your introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first panel on digital democracy in the age of AI, exploring elections, civil tech, and digital participation. And this is Kuan-Wei, and I'm an assistant professor at Kyoto University at KaiLab and in the AI and Law unit. And I'm from Taiwan as Ms. Ho. It's my great pleasure to be here as a moderator of this exciting panel, joined by three distinguished panelists, Professor Persily, Ms. Ho, and Professor Yamada, to discuss this important and timely topic. So from the beginning of digitalization to the current challenge posed by AI, our democracies have undergone or continue to undergo significant transformations. So today we'll delve into these developments, and we are incredibly fortunate to have three experts with diverse backgrounds, and they will engage in a dialogue on the topic of the so-called digital democracy from perspective of constitutional law and civil society. So as the first panel, before we start this interesting journey, first please allow me to briefly introduce how we will process today. So after my short introduction, we will process in a dialogue form, which is divided into three key subtopics. I'll ask a question for each panelist on three subtopics, and you will have 5 minutes for each round. And please feel free to respond to or add on other panelists' content in your 5 minutes. Sorry, I'll remind you of the time, and I know it's difficult, but it will be much appreciated if you can keep in time. And finally, we will have an open Q&A session to allow the audience on site here to engage with our speakers. So let's move to the first round of our discussion. So the first agenda of today is what is digital democracy in the age of AI? So as we begin our discussion on digital democracy, we often observe how digital technologies have transformed or have the potential to transform various aspects of the democracy life, from election to daily participation. And I believe Professor Persily, the founding co-director of the Stanford Cyber Policy Center and its program on democracy and the internet, as well as the Stanford MIT Healthy Election Project, as an expert, could help us set the stages by reflecting on these developments. So, Professor Persily, how do you view the evolving relationship between digital tools, democracy, and particularly the role of AI? Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the question, and thank you to everyone, my friend Hiroki and everyone who is putting this conference together. It is an honor to be here in general, but also in particular to come to Japan to talk about technology and democracy in the sort of many countries that we visit through the work at Stanford and in our informal and formal capacities. Japan has, and I think this is expressed by Hiroki, a very sort of mature and sophisticated approach to sort of the dual nature of technological developments. And I think you heard it in his remarks, and I'm going to amplify some of them today. Whether we're talking about AI or whether we're talking about some other digital technologies, these are tools that can be used for good or ill, right? And so speaking specifically about AI, and speaking specifically about the social system that we're talking about now, democracy, if you are a poor candidate in an election and you don't have a lot of money, AI will allow you to campaign in ways that you never could before. If you are an election administrator that has difficulty discerning fraud in the election or communicating with the voters, you will be able to use these tools in ways to make your job easier. At the same time, if you are a foreign intelligence agency and historically you've had difficulty, say, infiltrating another country because of language barriers, AI is going to make your job easier as well, right? And so the tools can be used for good or ill. And I think the job of regulators, as well as those of us who work in civil society and academia on this, is to think about ways to amplify the good potential of these technologies while mitigating the downside risks. It is not clear, by the way, that you can have all the benefits of these technologies without the risks. The same technology that may provide us a cure for cancer is also the one that could provide for a novel virus, right? And so it's very difficult to disentangle, I think, the good aspects from the bad. Now, I think when we think about AI and its relationship to democracy, our mind naturally gravitates to comparing it to social media, all right? I am on a mission these days to try to dissuade people from thinking about it in that way. And you see this in the United States, where there's, I think, the greatest pessimism and fear about AI, strangely enough, given that we have most of the major companies there. But I think there is a real fear of this technology because of what we call the techlash that we've had for the last 10 years as a result of the backlash to social media. And so people, when they think about technology and democracy, they think about, say, Facebook and the 2016 election in the United States, right? That's sort of where their mind goes. But AI is so much more than social media. It is so transformative and ubiquitous in the way that it will penetrate the economy and the democracy. Every digital tool, every one that you have in your pocket right now on your phone, has AI infused in it in some way. And that's going to be true, as I said before, for all the relevant political actors in the system. And so whether it's those who are trying to destabilize democracy or those who are trying to work within it, AI is going to help them amplify their abilities. Now, I do think there are other types of differences between AI and social media that we need to pay attention to. The speed at which AI is developing as a technology and the uncertainty of that direction is, I think, something that is somewhat different than with social media. It is sort of overwhelming to write in this area as an academic. We just published a book at Stanford on governing AI. It's 450 pages. It's unreadable, okay? I will tell you this. So you use your favorite AI tool to summarize it. But we didn't know when we would be done with this tool, with this book, because every week there's something new. And that's part of the problem with regulation as well, that this is such a fast-moving technology, and that its sort of impact on the economy and on society is so broad that it is very difficult, I think, to grapple with, whereas with social media, you're talking about a very defined and specific sphere. Second difference is the opacity, right? That we do not have the level of explainability of and understanding of this technology that we had with some others. Now, I think we're getting better, and we hope, I think, in the coming years that we'll get better. But all the more so, this is the reason I think Professor Luca mentioned how important it is to have transparency and to have greater disclosure of both how people are using the technology. We don't actually know right now how people are using ChatGPT and Claude and the other chatbots. So how much of their activity, for example, is related to politics and democracy versus coding and everything else that they're using for. So there are many differences, and I'll talk more about them in the other sets of questions. But it's an exciting time, to be talking and researching this work, and especially to think about the influence of this new technology on democracy.
Thank you very much, Professor Persily, for your key observations on the development of digital technology and democracy. And I believe that regarding the democratic aspect, we can gain some insights from Ms. Ho's experience. Ms. Ho is a lawyer who has been deeply involved in AI empowerment and civil tech society in Taiwan for many years. And Ms. Ho, drawing from your experience at the Taiwan AI Academy and engagement with civil groups, what are the key features of digital democracy, do you think? And how can AI empower or challenge these features? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I really appreciated the opportunity to discuss this important and timely issues. based on my limited experiences and through the years of exchange with civic tech communities across Asia Pacific, Europe, and North America, I have come to see that every country's democratic journey is different and constantly shifting. So I would like to answer this question through the lens of Taiwan's experience, while also being honest. I'm not entirely sure if Taiwan's digital democracy is currently thriving or declining. Let me start with what I believe are key characteristics of a thriving digital democracy. I think first and most fundamentally, it must be a democratic society under the rule of law. And by democratic, I mean the kind defined by ChatGPT, not the kind defined by DeepSeek. If you use this two chatbot, you will get a different answer. That might sound like a joke, but I think it captures something very important. The ChatGPT version of democracy emphasizes bottom-up processes, freedom of association, and human rights protection. The DeepSeek version claims to be a whole process democracy, but it's top-down, outcome-focused, and insists it's democratic as long as people's lives are made better. That's a critical distinction. Second, I think digital infrastructure matters. This includes something as basic but essential as reliable internet access, and in the near future, it may include access to chatbot and AI technology. When GovZero community started in 2012, it seems new. But actually, back around the year 2000, there was already a group of people in Taiwan trying to do similar things. They call themselves elixirs. These people include our first digital minister, Audrey Tang. Our idea was to use the social media of that era, like BBS. I'm not sure how many of you knows this. Bulletin board systems to introduce concepts like distributed governance. Today, we would like to call that a DAO, decentralized or autonomous organization. But the term didn't exist back then. The experiments with online voting, online deliberation, and community decision-making. It all sounds very familiar today, right? Just like the things we are working on now. But back then, every meetup started with spending an hour trying to connect to the internet via a PCMCIA cards. The infrastructure just wasn't ready, and those experiments fizzled out soon. Fast forward 12 years, when broadband and collaborative platform became widely available, that's when GovZero could really take off. Third, I think thriving digital democracy needs a small group of people, many small group of people who are committed and have privileged in terms of know-how, domain knowledge, time, resources, and the vision to initiate change. These people can be inside government or part of civil society. They are the ones who take on the top jobs, designing structure, setting strategic goals, and doing translation between communities, between domains, and between language of technology and policy. And I think that's what we are doing now today in the following 4 days. And this sounds daunting, but after more than a decade of practice and trial and error, in our GovZero community, we developed some methods that actually work. We compile these experiences into the GovZero Civic Tech Handbook, which also include experiences from other communities across Asia Pacific and Europe. Fourth, shared values and goals are very important. If we want to engage a broader public, we need more than just good design. We need external factors that motivate people. People need freedom and they need to care. In Taiwan, we face ongoing external threats. And for many citizens, the biggest motivation is to protect the freedoms and the systems we already have. That's why on weekends, instead of going hiking or shopping, many of Taiwanese citizens choose to attend Gov0 Hackathon or civic tech activities. It's our way of contributing to democratic resilience. As for AI, its greatest contribution is in enhancing efficiency. From infrastructure to organizing efforts to public engagement, there are countless ways AI can help. For instance, it can summarize a lot of discussions in plain language, make them more accessible. Yeah, so can I stop here? Yeah.
So thank you. I believe Ms. Ho's perspective offer insights from people from a bottom-up democratic viewpoint. So what about the institutional aspect, like law and policy? Professor Yamada is a constitutional law expert at Kyoto University. And Professor Yamada, considering your expertise in constitutional law and legal pluralism, how do you see the concept of digital democracy intersecting with established constitutional frameworks, and what challenge might the globalization of AI pose to national constitutional principles? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And first of all, before answering the question, I must humbly admit that I am not a specialist in digital democracy. But I have a deep interest in how new forms of democracy can be realized in transnational regimes beyond the nation state, especially through the use of digital technology. So now I'd like to proceed to the answer to Kuan-Wei's question. Though it has already been partly thematized in talk with two co-panelists, I must point out that the notion of digital democracy encompasses a wide range of interpretations, and some of which may even contradict each other. Therefore, any answer to this question depends on which definition we adopt. And on the one hand, some argue that more effective and meaningful deliberation can and should be achieved through advanced digital technologies, including those driven by artificial intelligence. This type of digital democracy appears to be emphasized in the Taiwanese context, if I don't misunderstand. Isabel and Kuan-Wei should make a correction later in case of my misunderstanding. So I believe this type of digital democracy understanding is fundamentally the right direction to pursue, although it may pose certain tensions with traditional parliament-centric representative democracy within nation states. While we must remain cautious to avoid populist or distorted usage of digital deliberation platforms and uncritical acceptance of their outcomes, I nonetheless see its great potential for enhancing also the quality of parliamentary decision-making. This can be achieved through the clarification of public opinion by digital forms of deliberation and more sophisticated electoral systems that better reflect the will of the people. On the other hand, some define digital democracy as the recognition of the real will of or preferences of the people through AI-driven data mining or something like that. Unfortunately, in the Japanese context, this understanding seems to be more widely supported among theorists who are interested in this topic, I think. To me, it resembles a modern digitalized version of Plato's philosopher king. Given the black box nature of AI, the risks associated with this approach are even more concerning. It may lead to a form of hidden elitism masquerading as democracy. Naturally, this model stands also in significant tension with traditional democratic principles. That's my answer.
Okay, so I believe Professor Yamada has helped us to grasp some challenge that digitalization and AI pose to legal expert from our first round of discussion. And speaking of institutional challenge in Agenda 2, let's talk about a crucial mechanism of democracy, elections. So again, Professor Persily, what do you think that are the most significant risk that AI poses to elections? And conversely, can AI also offer some can offer tools to make our election better or healthier in your project? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, I started by saying that AI is different than social media, so now let me tell you why it's similar, or how it interacts. So it's attracted, one of the reasons that I think people gravitate to thinking about AI like social media is that there are some similar problems. There is a disinformation problem, right? So the distribution of disinformation through social media, the generation of say, deep fakes, other kinds of disinformation through AI. There is a privacy problem. There is a bias and discrimination problem, right? There's a government surveillance problem. There's an antitrust problem. There are all kinds of antitrust competition problems. So there are some similarities there. Let me focus on the information ecosystem, which I think was kind of the core of your question, and try to draw that out. So let me start with a somewhat controversial take on this, which is that the panic over AI is itself a democracy problem, okay? So that to some extent, our fears about what AI is going to do to the information ecosystem provide a self-fulfilling prophecy that then lead people to distrust not just AI-generated information, but all information. And from a democracy perspective, that is actually a greater danger than the fact that people would be persuaded by individual false content, all right? So thinking about the interaction between, say, AI and social media, however much deep fakes or synthetic media you have in your feed, it is going to represent a tiny share of the total amount of information that you consume. The more that we panic about that tiny share, right, it is going to decrease your trust in the remaining information that's in your social media feed, right? And that is really what we call the liar's dividend, right? That, from a democracy perspective, is actually quite scary. If you look at public opinion polls in the United States before the last election, a majority of Americans thought that AI-produced disinformation could determine the outcome, right? And that it was likely to do so. There was plenty of deepfakes, AI-generated content. A lot of it was satire. A lot of it was silly pictures of President Trump hugging ducks and cats and things like that. You know, if you saw that, you know, people dressing up, you know, fakes about Taylor Swift and supporting the president. And you've seen actual deep fakes around the world, whether it's in Slovakia, whether it's Bangladesh, a few other places where there is Romania, some possibility that's had an impact. And I know that here in Japan, you've been talking about foreign intervention and how AI may have affected some of the recent elections. That is a problem. It is a very difficult problem to solve, just as disinformation is a problem to solve, difficult problem to solve. But as I said, one of the difficulties is that the more that you sound the alarm that you cannot trust the things that you are seeing on social media, the more that people are just going to distrust what they see on social media. And that has a knock-on effect, which is that then it allows politicians to lie with greater ease, because then they say what you think is true is actually false. And if you look around the world in this last election season, this was like the World Cup of elections over the last year, the use of AI or the use of the claim about AI to say that something that was true was actually false had greater impact than false claims actually proving to be true. All right, so now in my last 30 seconds, let me talk about the benefits and what can be done. I actually have a student who has developed a consulting company for what he calls a campaign consultant in a box, which is an AI-generated tool that he's trying to sell to politicians, so that they could have one-on-one conversations with voters, so that you on the phone or elsewhere. It can help develop political advertising at a fraction of the cost. He actually developed I said, develop a song for me of Nate Persily for Congress. And of course, he did it in 5 minutes, right? Something that would have taken, let's say, $100,000 and would have taken weeks to produce in the pre-AI world. I also had him develop an attack advertisement against me, just in the spirit of fairness. So, but he could do that as well. And so these are the tools, anything which involves the production of information, the dissemination of information, persuasion. It's a double-edged sword where it can be used for ill, but it also can be used by election administrators and for candidates who are using AI.
Okay, so thank you so much, Professor Persily, for your insights and for giving us a picture of election in the age of AI. Now, focusing more on the legal framework, let's turn to Professor Yamada first at this round. And so, Professor Yamada, from the perspective of constitutional law, how might the use of AI in electoral process raise questions about due process or fair electoral procedures? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your question. And to answer this question, we should divide the theme of the use of AI in electoral process into two dimensions, I think. The first one is on the use of AI in electoral campaigns, on which our two our co-panelists have already focused. And the second one is on the application of AI-driven technology to enable more complex voting system, which, for example, allow electorate to vote not only to the one candidate, but also two or more candidates every issue, and improve the efficiency of vote counting. In the first dimension, needless to say, there is a significant concern regarding the use of deepfakes and other AI-generated misinformation to manipulate public opinions, as Nathaniel already mentioned while referring also to the possible countermeasures. While at the same time, AI technologies offer people new opportunities to express their views and engage in broader public discussions, as I think Isabel will show concrete example in Taiwan. I think, but I don't know. but it's undeniable that fake news and other forms of misinformation pose a serious threat to the foundation of democracy, and thus must be regulated. But however, it is extremely difficult to control effectively in practice. Moreover, a complete prohibition on the use of AI in election campaigns is unrealistic. This dilemma reveals a troubling reality. That is, regulating and policing fake news on social media may have a disproportionate chilling effect on ordinary citizen speech, which in itself could distort the democratic public sphere. Yeah, I thought. The second dimension may, at first glance, appear more promising, I think. AI can potentially improve the efficiency and the sophistication of voting systems. However, the so-called black box nature of AI makes it difficult for individuals to challenge or appeal the outcome generated by such systems. Electronic voting also may increase the risk of hacking or other forms of manipulation. While these risks might be mitigated through the development of advanced cybersecurity technologies, including AI-driven ones, the mere existence of such vulnerabilities may fuel conspiracy theories and undermine public trust on the electoral or whole political system, I think. Then, in summary, both dimensions of AI use in the electoral process may raise serious concerns regarding the due process in the election and the foundational principles of representative democracy. However, I must regrettably admit that I don't have a definitive solution to this complex and pressing issue at this time. So I am sorry about this unhelpful conclusion, but that is what I can say here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yamada. I believe that no one has answer and solution. But thank you very much for sharing your insight in these two dimensions. And I believe these risks certainly make us a little bit nervous, and we should take more care about it. Now, once again, if we look at these from a citizen's perspective, so Ms. Ho, in the context of elections, how can AI be leveraged responsibly to increase voter engagement or improve, let's talk about something positive, yes, to improve electoral process, particularly from the civic tech perspective, and what ethical considerations should we think about when applying AI in this sensitive political area? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we don't have a solution. That's the reason we are here today. So I think I would like to respond to Nat's remarks. I think at the year of 2023, at the Taiwan Internet Governance Forum, we have talked about how the future of politics, political marketing, or say cognitive manipulation will be personalized, driven by robots, chatbots, and and the profiling that enable precision messaging. And just a few days ago, the New York Times published a letter from a reader documenting a real example from Taiwan's 2024 presidential election, showing that how this is already happening. So, yeah, but I think the biggest challenge here is not the AI technology, it's the people behind AI. It's not artificial intelligence that determines our future, it's a human intelligence that does. The people behind this technology, the policies that shape them, the regulation that guide them, they are what matters. And I do think trust is absolutely crucial. So from myself and many of the contributors in the global civic tech society communities, we've seen how our adversaries have weaponized democratic system, especially the electoral elections process. What they are trying to destroy is our trust in each other, our trust in institution, and our trust in democracy. I mean, the ChatGPT's version of democracy. I think AI technology, of course, for now, AI technology can apply to many scenarios in election process, but I think AI technologies are evolving at a breakneck pace. The tools we are using today might be just phased out in the next 6 months. So given our limited capacity for R&D in civic tech community, most of us in the community have chosen not to chase the cutting edge technology. Instead, I think we will wait and observe how the technology evolve. But at this moment of transition, I think it's a new civilization begins to emerge. We have chosen to focus on foundational work, learning it together with more people, the skill needs to survive in this new era, and cultivating the value required to treat each other with care and respect. Rather than simply using AI as tools, we treat AI as a hook, an incentive to bring more people into the fold. By learning AI, they are also exposed to our community, the Scope-Zero's methods of working together, collaboratively and transparently. Because of learning AI isn't just like memorizing history, I think learning AI is more like learning swimming, not learning history. Because you cannot learning swimming by reading a book, right? You need to get into the water, get into a pool to learn how to swim. It's the same as learning AI. So it is necessary to do hands-on projects. And that's what we are good at, what our community good at. So project-based learning is key. And that's exactly where the GovZero approach shines. Through partnership with Taiwan AI Academy and other NGOs and the local governments, high schools, university across Taiwan, we are trying to build a network to learn together and to do hands-on projects together. And also we distribute the public experience in these networks. And we want to help more than like 20,000 people to build their foundational AI literacy over the next 2 years. And if 5 to 10% of them become project initiators, that's a meaningful civic force. People engaging in political beyond voting. I think that's the way we are trying to do now. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping time. Yes. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that's very challenging but exciting. It feels like that as citizens, we still have lots to do in the age of AI. So following this, we can now move on to Agenda 3, which is also civil tech and digital participation, empowering citizens with AI. So in the third round, let's have Ms. Ho as an expert in this area kick us off by expanding our imagination regarding civil technology, and then we'll ask other professors for some institutional recommendations. Sorry. So Ms. Ho, how can AI applications within civil tech enhance democracy? Enhance public deliberation, citizen participation, and collective decision making. Can you share some examples of these or promising, let's say, talk about something positive, new approaches? Thank you.
Oh yes, there are a lot of possibilities. Like I think AI technology can help opinion clustering. Like if you use machine learning, we have tools like Polis. The Taiwan project use a lot of it. It can help identify consensus and the divergences points among the people. And AI can help to do large-scale feedback and analysis, like government can do the consultation and process citizens' input more efficiently. And it can help proposal evaluation. There are a lot of things AI can help, like real-time misinformation feedback. Yeah, that could be possible because like a project like CoFact is a fact-check project in GovZero community. It uses AI to do the first stage feedback for the viewers. Yeah, so there are a lot of things AI can do, but I actually hear, and it could support a lot of principles we care about, like inclusion, like modality. AI tools can help the people with physical challenges to get more involved in political processes, and it can help support transparency, to open the government data or government filings to be more transparent. But actually, if we look at all these possibilities and we look back at what large language model can do, it actually, I think a large language model can read, can generate text. It has more knowledge than any single human about all subjects in the near future. I think large language model already beat me in mathematics or physics, right? So it can browse the internet. They can do now. It can do this now. It can use existing software infrastructure like a calculator, Python, these things, and it can see and generate images and videos. It can hear and speak and generate music, as mentioned by Nat. It can think for a long time using a system to tools process. It can self-improve in domains that offer a reward function. It can customize and fine-tuned for specific tasks. Many versions exist in app stores. It can communicate with other large language models, right? For now, we are using these AI capabilities separately. But what if it can be combined all together? What do you think about this kind of AI with all these capabilities? It's just like a human being, right? So I would like to think about if it is possible that with a human agent, we are more like trust AI technology or AI agent to make the political agent decisions by us. Is it possible that in maybe 5 or 10 years, a party will a party is not made the decision by individual human beings. It's made the decisions by the models, the agent, based on specific databases and algorithms, and you authorize them to do the political decision by us. I would like to think wild in this very historic venue and invite you to imagine every possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, yeah, even with a lot of challenge, such approaches or experiences are encouraged for other countries as well, globally. So when it comes to global, on this point, I would like to ask Professor Yamada to offer some reflections, not solutions. So, Professor Yamada, what legal or constitutional advantage or challenge does the increasing reliance on AI of digital participation pose, and what do you think? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to focus on the possibility of deliberation through the AI technologies. Obstacles to deliberation, such as language barriers and physical constraints on holding meetings, can increasingly be overcome with the assistance of AI-driven digital technologies. This is significantly meaningful for poor English speaker like me, especially in the international or global context. But my poor English pronunciation confuses AI translation system today, though. But anyway, thanks to these developments, meaningful discussion and deliberation that supports the reflection of public opinion in decision-making can now take place not only at the domestic level, but also within global quasi-legal systems and regimes. This potential is particularly significant in global governance context, which typically lack parliaments or some forms of similar formal venues for public input, and where linguistics and cultural barriers are even greater than in nation states. In this regards, AI-supported digital participation mechanisms may open up new possibilities for democracy at the transnational level and some kind of constitutional system at global level. However, globally designed or programmed AI may also come into conflict with more closed and self-contained nature of domestic democratic system under national constitutionalizing. In other words, globalized structures and the perspectives of AI design or programming will exert more substantial influence over democratic decision-making process in following era. And besides, even if the technical means for broader participation exist, it remains difficult to determine the proper scope and the composition of stakeholders who ought to be involved in certain global decision-making process. Nonetheless, the black box nature of AI presents substantial challenges also in this context. Manipulation of the very software intended to facilitate deliberation may subtly steer public opinion or influence outcomes without being noticed. Additionally, deliberation among participants who lack sufficient familiarity with the subject matter or relevant expertise can easily be influenced or even dominated by elite technocrats. In such cases, the mere fact that a deliberative process have occurred may serve as an alibi for legitimizing decisions that were in reality predetermined. We must also recognize the success on the meaningful deliberation requires more than just the availability of digital forum. That is, it also demands a certain level of expertise or deliberative competence on the part of participants. In a world as complex as ours, it's neither realistic nor fair to expect ordinary people who are preoccupied with the demands of everyday life to engage consistently and actively in political debate, even if AI technology helps to lower some of the practical barriers. Although I am afraid that such arguments should somehow elitist, we should take this reality more seriously to design truly meaningful frameworks for political participation and deliberation among students, not only domestic but also global level. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Yamada, for your insightful input with English. And personally, I believe these challenges require continuous research and ongoing public attention. So for the last question in this final round, let's give the stage to Professor Persily, who has traveled the farthest from US, and to help us complete the picture of our discussion today. So Professor Persily, as AI increasingly shapes the civic tech platforms and digital participation, so what legal or governance frameworks are necessary to protect human fundamental rights, ensure access, and maintain trust in all these forms of democratic engagement? Thank you.
Thank you. So in the discussion up till now, we've assumed that there's this thing called a democracy problem that can be sort of hived off from all the other problems and challenges that AI might pose. But if there's a cyber attack that takes down the electrical grid because of AI, that could be a democracy problem. If AI leads to mass unemployment because of labor force displacement, that's a democracy problem. If it has huge impacts on the climate, right, that will accelerate climate change, that itself also is a democracy problem. And so most of the time we think about, like I said before, the kind of familiar interaction with the information ecosystem or the other kinds of classical democracy issues. But if you start thinking about the scale and the kind of penetration of AI through all social systems, right, it is in some ways almost difficult to get your mind around it. In the narrow area that we've sort of been talking about in thinking about deliberation and campaigning and elections, there are certain things that I think jump to mind. One is, and this was mentioned before, increasing disclosure so that you know that you are interacting with AI, right? Now, that's not just a democracy issue. I think we need that generally, but whether it's candidates who are using AI in their, in both in targeting and in the production of content, we certainly need that. We need better disclosure generally with respect to the AI industry. Let me say, you know, as the American on the panel, I am actually quite concerned about the power of a few corporations that are not too far from my house in California, right? And that is a problem for us. That is a problem for the world, right? Now that is similar in some ways to what was happening with social media, but the influence that these companies are going to have over not just the information ecosystem, but the economic system around the world is, I think, something that's quite concerning. And particularly since we do not have a good grasp on how people are using these tools, I think that is where law really has to come in to provide greater transparency as to what's going on in these companies and what's happening with these models. There are other things that I think we need to think about that I think you also put your finger on. And let me just add that Taiwan has been the most innovative when it comes to thinking about technology and democracy in the world. We are at Stanford, we're part of this group calling the Project Liberty Institute. One representative, Sarah Nicole, is here from that. And Audrey Tang is part of that. Audrey Tang's really been at the forefront of thinking about the nuanced questions of technology and democracy, and particularly AI. And so I think one thing that you identified is the special problem for democracy of AI agents, right? We have always thought that kind of democracy is about deliberation between human beings with each other. The more that we have artificial replicas of ourselves or artificial creations that are dominating the information environment, influencing politics, that is a unique problem from a democracy perspective. And I think it requires some innovation in thinking about how we're going to have greater disclosure of those agents and also explicit regulation of them. But as I said before, and I'll conclude with this, AI is coming, right? It's here already. It's coming for all social systems, and democracy is not unique among them. And all of these challenges that we're talking about today, and we'll be talking about through the weekend, there are sort of a good side, a good story to tell, and a challenging and fearful story to tell. We're going to have both of those stories. We're going to be telling both of those stories for many years to come. And it's also up to us to try to steer the course of this technology to its most productive ends.
Thank you for this inspiring conclusion. So thank you to our three panelists for their insightful contributions, and we see some hopes and also a lot of challenges. So we will now open the floor to the audience for all the questions you have, and for next 10 minutes. And if I think we can collect a round of questions before inviting everyone to answer. And if you want to, if you have questions for each other, even also, and so please, when you asking your questions, please briefly introduce yourself and indicate which panelist you would like to ask, and please try to be mindful of the time. Thank you.
Thanks for the panelists, and thanks for the mic is just coming back. And I'm Wei, but you can call me Peter. And I'm currently a law student in National Taiwan University, and I also work as a coordinator in the Taiwan community, and I'm learn a lot on deliberative democracy and all these kind of process, and we try to use the AI tools into the whole process in our community. So I have two questions. The first question is that we need to considering about the backgrounds of the AI developments currently.
For whom? A question for whom?
For all the panelists.
Yeah. Can you, because we only have 10 minutes, can you just select one?
Okay, I would like to select Isabel to answer this question. And my second one will be selecting Professor Persily for the question. So first question is, how should the civic tech community, as well as the government from your perspective, to work with the private company who controls and develops most of the AI tools that we are using? That is the first question for me. And the second question will be, since Professor Persily talked about a lot of possibilities and the risk about AI usage in the digital democracies or the traditional democracy process, I wonder what is the boundary of the AI usage? What kind of work should not be delegated to AI, and what kind of work should be delegated to AI in the traditional or digital democracy process? These are my two questions. Thanks.
Hello, Professor. Thank you for your excellent sharing. I'm Chao Kai-Yang. I'm just got back from Stanford Law School, and I'm going to Minnesota Law School this fall. And I'm curious about maybe Professor Persily and Professor Ho. I'm curious about the relationship between the regulation of AI and digital democracy itself, because there is a common belief that if the democratic country regulate AI, it will restrict AI development, and authoritarian regimes will surpass the development. Like maybe the recent AI plan, action plan is kind of thinking. And so my question is, like, if we want to preserve the digital democracy against the authoritarian regime, do we need to let AI develop or to be used without the democracy itself?
But yeah, thank you for the fascinating panel. And my name is Naho Nakakubo. I'm from a startup of AI and sustainability called Shepherd & Company. So my question to the panel, so I cannot say the panel, so maybe it could be a question to Professor Yamada maybe. But what's the best way to effectively tackle with the disinformation issue by AI? So that's my question, because as you might know, of course, there's the regulations cannot catch up with the speed of AI. And I see updates almost every day. And also there's issue of chilling effect raised by Professor Yamada. So should we instead look into corporate responsibility or more like a self-driven regulations, or it could be AI itself? They can, of course, monitor this information. So I wanted to know what do you think is the best way? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's collect the last question from.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kwame Odamidakwa from Ghana, and my question is for Isabel Hu. You, at the start, you mentioned the definition of a digital democracy, and you mentioned having core internet infrastructure available for the people to use. I'm wondering from people from my continent, for example, where you have sort of the highest rates of internet cuts during elections and around that time, do you have any ideas around what could be used alternatively if you have a government who shuts off the internet a month before elections? Because this happens across Africa and I'll say other parts of Asia as well. What do you think citizens could do from the grassroots or independently to, in a way, move beyond the core problem of infrastructure if that is being interrupted? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for all the questions. So now we'll just maybe 2 minutes for one panelist. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, I think I will start with the last questions. Because we are actually facing the threat of cutting the cable in Taiwan. So we are actually experimenting some mesh network just within the intranet actually around the island. So I think some distributed system might emerge. So and please keep connected to civil society globally. Then we can share the experiences together. I think I hope in near future we'll find a way to do that. And for the first and second questions, I think to collaborate with the big companies, we actually do that in Taiwan, in Taiwan AI Academy. We got support from Google and Meta to do the AI literacy programs to the general public. I think the thing is you have to like a clear goal and to find and convince the companies that this goal is like aligned with their goal. So then we can leverage the resources together. But for the government, I think the government usually will use regulatory tools to force the companies to collaborate or cooperate with them. And I'm not sure the question from Chen. I'm not sure what's the question. I forgot the question. Okay. Can you repeat it again?
I just think like if you some will argue that if you regulate AI and like
okay, regulation and democracy. Among all the models we have seen in the world, I think the Japanese approach is the most convincing to me. I mean, the hard law and the software law work together. And today I know why this makes sense so much to me, because these people are behind the scene, I think.
All right, let me deal with just a few of these. So let me start where you left off, which is, look, AI regulation is going to happen. It is necessary not only to prevent harms, it's necessary to realize the benefits, right? So that we absolutely need AI. So so the idea that, oh my gosh, regulation is going to retard development of AI is just a myth. And it's an ideological argument that's principally made in the United States. But if you think of something easy, take it out of the democracy realm for a second, autonomous vehicles, right? someone's going to have to pay if one of the Waymo cars in San Francisco runs over my foot, right? And so there has to be regulation to provide answers. And the question is not sort of whether there's going to be regulation, but who's going to regulate and in what context. And you can see it, we need answers on copyright, and intellectual property. We need answers on defamation, all these other kinds of injury questions. And so there's a larger question I think you're hinting at, which is whether regulation of the technology itself, at a high level like the EU AI Act does, whether that's going to retard development. And the answer is, well, it depends how you do it. I think this kind of transparency impulse is one that doesn't retard development and is absolutely critical. Let me just talk a little bit about disinformation, since that's an area of work that I've spent quite a bit of time in. It is very difficult to inoculate people from disinformation while at the same time not leading to distrust of all true information, for the reasons that I was saying before. Different countries are better situated to deal with the disinformation problem than others. Actually, both Taiwan and Japan are much better situated than the United States, in part because, and this is true for Northern Europe as well, if you have robust public information systems, public broadcasting, you are in a better position to combat disinformation. But one of the difficulties, and we have several studies on this that we've done, it is extremely difficult to counteract individual pieces of disinformation, and that would include AI-generated disinformation, in the time required before the content achieves virality, right? Because it's at that stage where you are unsure as to whether what is out there is true or not, and so you run into the problem that you might over-censor at the front end before you know whether something is true or not. And so this is going to be a continuing problem with disinformation that's AI generated. We need to develop the public institutions in areas where there's real trust in these public institutions to try to combat it.
It says that the time passed, so I answer in short. Yeah. And the question to me is about how to combat the misinformation or something like that. And it's very difficult question, and I have to confess I have no clear answer to that at this time. But as the questioner said, it is I think it is possible to some kind of mixed or co-regulation with government and corporation, but I think it's one way, and so it's hard to and I think the government should show some message or a kind of a strong message to they don't allow the misinformation, and some kind of mechanism to patrol the misinformation is needed. But I like to emphasize words is that it is not clever to with strict regulation is not good for a good way. I think. Sorry. Yeah.
So sadly, time's up. So I believe today's discussion has been truly fruitful, and we've all learned a lot. So once again, I'd like to extend my gratitude to our three panelists for this engaging dialogue, and to everyone for your participation. Yes, participation is very important in democracy and digital democracy. So I hope today's panel has been thought-provoking and inspire further conversation. So let's keep in touch in digital democracy in the age of AI. So thank you very much.